Milo is an ugly, dirty orphan boy whose parents left him to rot with his big sister since she was too fat for them to feed. But what they didn't know was that Milo is a genius who became the greatest doctor of the century and cured the biggest cancer of this world, Twitter. But before any of this, Tokyo used to be the greatest city in the world until one day, it was not. A huge disaster struck Japan like Recap-Kun, reducing Tokyo into a barren land just like an average white woman after turning 40. After the disaster, the whole world changed forever and people adapted to their new lifestyle. Communities thrived amongst the places that survived, and people started to consume resources that were normally meant to be eaten by animals and rodents alike. At an outpost outside one of the communities named Gunma, a fat border patrol officer named Inashige is talking trash to a kid who was supposed to fix their pass checking machine. But he didn't, as he was too busy playing Genshin Impact and pulling for his latest Gunnar gacha characters. Inashige knows that it's useless to argue with a brain-rotted child, so he moves towards the man who seems to be a monk from Tenka Order, an organization full of weird people with deep affiliations in the government. The monk calls himself Wataru, which is his monastic name since he no longer remembers his real name anymore. Since the pass-checking machine is not working, Inashige can only ask Wataru some questions. While he is asking Wataru about some questions, he notices him staring at the poster on the wall, so he informs him that the wanted poster is of a famous terrorist named Bisco, who is also known as Man-Eating Mushroom. The allegations against Bisco are extremely long, but the worst one is spreading rust by using mushrooms, which he uses his bow to shoot at things, which then grows into giant tree-sized mushrooms, destroying anything in their path. While explaining this to him, Inashige asks Wataru about his carriage, which is covered by a white cloth. Wataru tells him that inside the carriage are dead bodies, which Inashige laughs off, considering that he might be joking around to ease the tension. After talking to him for a bit more, he allows him to head inside, but just when Wataru is about to step forward, Inashige stops him, asking one last question before he gives him the permit. Meanwhile, in Imahama Prefecture, an old lady who is running a nightlife business comes to a doctor's office to get all of her employees checked for any health problems, since in their industry, they need to be always healthy or their customers will not work with them anymore. While the old lady sits outside with other girls, inside the room, a girl who has huge melons can't help but shake from fear as she is afraid of the thickness of the doctor's needle. She is worried that she might not be able to take it all in since it's too long and thick. But the doctor assures her that she will be fine and insert it gently so that the girl will not feel much pain. The needle was for a medicine to keep an incurable disease known as rust under control. After getting her thick injection, the girl leaves after thanking the doctor and returns back to her nightly business, where she will be receiving even thicker needles all night. After she leaves, a man comes to the doctor alongside his son. The doctor is commonly known as Dr. Panda, but his real name is Milo, an ordinary yet extraordinary doctor who is extremely famous for being extremely kind-hearted and generous. After checking the young boy, Milo tells the man to sit next, so he can check his health as well. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, a mysterious man is sitting at a food stall where he hands the shopkeeper some mushrooms which are banned by the government because of the claims that they are the reason behind the spread of rust. But despite this, the shopkeeper still buys it and the man leaves after telling him that he will be getting even rarer ones later on. Back to Milo, he finishes checking up on the man and asks the other remaining girls to come inside the room for a checkup. And after finishing their checkups, he is about to leave when suddenly the old lady asks him if he wants to spend the night with one of her girls, as it will help him alleviate his tiredness. Hearing this, all the girls jump on him as if they are hungry wolves jumping on a nearby fat sheep. But unfortunately, Milo doesn't want to lose his V-card to these run-down girls and makes an excuse about his sister's illness and leaves. After leaving his clinic, he heads to his favorite food stall where he meets the same shopkeeper that bought those mushrooms earlier. Milo is here to buy those mushrooms as he wants to test them to see if they can help him produce a cure for the rust disease. The shopkeeper wants to give the mushrooms to Milo for free, but Milo doesn't accept it since it's against his policy to take free things. After buying the mushrooms, he heads back home where he meets his older sister, Pau, who is watching the news, and from her condition it can be seen that she is close to her end. The rusting has covered almost half of her body, and any more will immediately cause her to crumble away entirely. However, she still looks extremely intense, especially her big talons, which are close to spilling out of her robes. After handing his sister the food that he brought, He immediately retires into his lab where he starts putting mushrooms into small test tubes to see if he can make them work against the rust. Unfortunately, his experiments fail, which makes him a bit disappointed, but he still doesn't lose hope and exits the lab to head outside for some work. But when he is about to leave, Pau, who is watching the news, learns that the man-eating mushroom is terrorizing the nearby areas around Imahama Prefecture once again. This makes her worried, so she asks her precious brother to be careful, who tells her that he will be fine as it's not a big task. Milo is walking down the street when suddenly a young boy attacks and jumps on him to steal the parcel in his hand. As the kid gets on top of him, he mistakes Milo for a woman due to his feminine appearance, which gives Milo an opportunity to stop the boy as he tells him that it's bad to hit women. But fortunately for the kid, Milo isn't a woman, so he gets a free pass. The kid apologizes to Milo and leaves after Milo treats a stinger on his face, which could have led to him being blinded by the poison. After the kid leaves, Milo is approached by the governor, Kirikawa, who tells Milo that being kind in this world without expecting benefits is completely ridiculous. But Milo has other views as he retorts and tells him that being kind has made him the man that he is, even though he is often mistaken to be a woman. Kirikawa is interested in Milo, not physically but in his mind, what he needs for his government, which will allow them to secure even more funding from the higher-ups, which means more corruption for him to do. But unfortunately, Milo isn't interested in the offer as he is busy researching for a cure to heal his sister, who also happens to be the captain of the Gunma Watch, the most elite fighting force of the Imahama Prefecture. Kirikawa promises Milo that if he joins him, he will give him enough funding to live a lavish life, and he will also give his sister some medicines to lessen the spread of the rust disease till he can find the cure for the disease. But his words are cut in half as suddenly, out of nowhere, the prefecture is attacked by the man-eating mushroom terrorist, who starts shooting mushrooms everywhere in the city to destroy things. Milo is shocked by the size of the mushrooms and immediately rushes home to tell his sister what he saw, but he arrives home. He finds that Pau is ready to head to the battle even though she is in no condition to fight. He tries to stop her, but she knocks him down as his head falls on top of soft cushions, making him not hurt at all. Later, Milo wakes up and heads to his lab where he is thinking about getting some mushroom samples to test out things, but just then, Bisco appears behind him, scaring the crap out of Milo, who starts stumbling over his words as he yells out terrorists to alert everyone. As for how Bisco even reached inside the city, let alone terrorize anyone, let's go back to the start where Inoshige stops Wataru to ask one final question, which is for him to sing a basic mantra that almost every monk can sing. This makes Wataru step back a little bit, which makes Inoshige sure that he is suspicious, so he asks Uda to go and close the door, which makes Wataru agitated, causing him to reveal his true identity, which is none other than Bisco. Inoshige tries to stop Bisco with the border patrol defenses, which are none other than hippos attached with machine guns to stop all the intruders. Unfortunately for Inoshige, Bisco is extremely strong, not to mention he has the support of Akutagawa, a giant crab that is being controlled by his teacher Jabai. Jabai easily defeats the hippos chasing after him and uses his mushroom arrows to create a mushroom beneath themselves to jump high into the sky to cross the wall that blocks their entrance. After running away, they spend the eve in the desert where Jabai talks about dying soon since the rust is spreading to him and he has not much time left to live. This makes Bisco extremely angry, who asks him to shut up and promises that he will find a cure for the rust at all costs. But Jabai knows his condition and knows that he doesn't have much to live and is glad to pass away soon because he has nothing left to teach to Bisco anymore. Bisco doesn't like his words and leaves to go talk with the giant crab, who can only listen to him since he can't talk in human language. While Bisco is yapping about his problems in front of Akutagawa, a missile is suddenly launched towards their direction, which causes him to immediately pull out his bow to destroy it before it reaches them. The missile was from Tyrol, one of the members of Kirikawa's special forces. She is flying in a special aircraft whose front is a giant slimy snail. The aircraft is also equipped with machine guns which start shooting towards Kirikawa, who is about to dodge them, but he is too slow since something from below the ground electrocuted him, which halted his movement to a stop. To save his student, Jabai sacrifices himself and takes the bullets on his back instead. This makes Bisco extremely angry that he immediately pulls out his bows and attacks the aircraft with a powerful shot that causes the aircraft to crash and burst apart. Tyrol manages to survive as she glides down towards the prefecture using her parachute. Bisco immediately checks Jabai, who is losing blood quickly, so he wastes no time in running towards the prefecture to find a doctor. The doctor that he found was Milo, so Bisco threatens him to save Jabai, but Milo would have done the same even if he didn't threaten him. But unfortunately, they aren't able to perform an operation on Jabai in the lab since they are discovered by Kurikawa's special forces who are in bunny masks. They threaten Bisco to surrender, but Bisco tells them that he has a hostage and that if they do anything he will kill him, but the soldiers don't care a single bit as they start emptying their magazines at the house, which makes even Milo shocked, who didn't think that they would do such a thing. Bisco immediately shoots some mushrooms into the building to create distraction, which allows them to escape into sewers, where Bisco tells Milo to perform on Jabai while he goes outside to stop anyone from coming after them. But Milo stops him and tells him to let him stitch his head first since he is bleeding out so much. Bisco is annoyed at first, but after Milo persists, he agrees, and after it is done, Bisco is allowed to leave as he thanks Milo like a tsundere before immediately leaving. Meanwhile, Kurikawa finds Tyrol and learns from her that Bisco is extremely strong and that he was easily able to destroy her aircraft with just a single arrow from his bow. Kurikawa is surprised, but he doesn't really care about his strength as he expects his forces to take him down eventually, or else there will be no benefits of paying them such hefty salaries. He hands Tyrol a revolver and tells her that she has time till morning to deal with Bisco, and leaves. On the other hand, Pau also learns about Kurikawa's special forces and isn't happy at all. She feels that he undermines the Gunma Watch, and as their captain she feels extremely dissatisfied. After learning the situation from her subordinates, she hands them the orders to expand towards the block where Bisco didn't shoot any mushrooms since it would be obvious of him to stay at that place anymore. She is also about to move ahead with them, but just then she hears a news from her subordinates that the Panda Clinic was also attacked by Bisco and is now in shambles. This news causes Pau to become extremely anxious as she immediately hands them some new orders before running towards a particular block to deal with Bisco on her own. After some time, she finally finds Bisco, who is stepping on Tyrol and punishing her for being a bad girl, which Tyrol seems to be enjoying a lot, but she can't admit it or else Bisco will step off, considering her to be too shameful. While she is getting freaky, Pau arrives at the scene and finds Bisco stepping all over Tyrol and immediately decides to attack him without even giving him a chance to explain himself. Bisco defends himself by shooting an arrow at her, which Pau easily blocks using her sword. Bisco is a bit surprised since his arrows are even faster than the bullets out there. Pau knows that it would be difficult for her to close the distance without creating a distraction, so she throws her bike into the sky, causing Bisco to look up as he calls her a terrible driver. But what he doesn't know is that Pau is down below to strike him. But fortunately his instincts have been honed by his teacher, which allows him to block the attack at the last minute, but the force behind the attack leaves him numb for a few seconds. Pau threatens Bisco to surrender himself, but Bisco replies that she should have done it first before striking him like a maniac out of nowhere. He doesn't understand why she is so furious at him and asks if he killed her parents or something. But instead of answering like a normal human, Pau growls at him and chases him like a wild animal. Although calling her wild animal would be a bit harsh since she's so pretty, which is also the reason why Bisco is having such a hard time facing her. His eyesight keeps on going at her massive bonkers, which makes him unable to look at her positioning, which causes him to lose the upcoming few exchanges. Seeing that he can't win against her without turning gay, he chooses the less violent option, which is to tell her the truth about the mushrooms and how they aren't dangerous at all. He explains that his status as a mushroom terrorist is wrong because mushrooms don't spread rust. Instead, they are good at absorbing it, which is also why there are so many mushrooms growing at places covered with rust. But Pau doesn't accept his words because she feels that he is just lying to get away. Poor Bisco can only continue to talk more as Pau keeps on pushing him further and further, as she also starts mentioning his crimes against humanity, which includes spreading chaos and mushrooms all over the city and wreaking havoc everywhere he goes. While they are both stuck in rebuttals against each other, Milo is chilling in the sewers alongside Jabai and other rats. Since Jabai lost so much blood, Milo had to do a blood transfusion. He didn't know his blood group, so he randomly chose one, and fortunately Jabai's body accepted it without showing any concerns. Jabai also wakes up, and even though he doesn't know much about modern medical techniques, he is grateful to Milo for saving him. But Milo is still not happy since his rust has spread to almost entirely of his body, which means that he doesn't have much longer to live. Just as he says this, Jabai opens his eyes, which frightens Milo as if he saw a dead person just stand up right in front of him. Jabai is confused and asks him if he considered him dead or something, to which Milo answers that he is pretty confident in his medical skills, but he didn't expect him to wake up this soon. Jabai laughs it off as he tells Milo that he is just an ordinary old man with slightly extraordinary skills. He also tells Milo that he heard everything that Milo and Bisco were talking about and assures him that Bisco is a kind kid just a bit too tsundere to show his true emotions. After talking about Bisco for a while, Jabai comes to the main thing, which is the mushrooms and the mushroom keepers. He tells Milo that mushrooms are great at absorbing rust, which is why their healing properties against rust are so great. As for why people mistook them to be a reason for the spread of rust, it's because they grow in the areas where there is a lot of rust. But the problem is that there are millions of types of mushrooms, and so to find the correct one which is the best against rust is almost close to impossible. That would have been true if there weren't rumors of a legendary mushroom that is capable of eating 100% of the rust, which is almost unheard of. Jabai and Bisco had been searching for that mushroom all this time, but unfortunately they weren't able to find it. Back to Bisco and Pawu. They are still fighting each other as Bisco tries his best to calm down Pawu and explain to her that he is not a terrorist, and that he is actually trying to cure the world of the rust. While mentioning this, he also mentions Milo and tells Pawu that he is a fine doctor and wonders if they are related because they both look alike each other. Hearing him mention her precious brother makes Pawu mind go crazy as she charges at Bisco like a wild animal while she tries to make him puke out the whereabouts of Milo. Bisco smiles because this is good for him since she has lost her rationality, and uses this chance to subdue her, but he overestimates himself and underestimates Pawu's love for Milo, which causes him to fly back right into a giant baseball leaving behind a shape that matches exactly his height. But despite this, Bisco is still not finished, which shocks everyone since any normal human would be dead by this time. But both Bisco and Pawu are different breeds as they continue to stand up even after being defeated many times. Since Bisco can't win a front-to-front battle because his eyes are stuck on her massive melons, he can only use a dirty trick to lower her guard and knock her out, so that she doesn't wake up anytime soon. After knocking her out, Bisco takes her away from the prying eyes, but his intentions are not as impure as most of the guys watching this video, as he is taking her to a safe location to drop her and leave to check upon his teacher. But just then, he is ambushed from behind and immediately strikes back with his own attack, only to find that it was just Jabai testing his instincts to see if he can still combat or not. Bisco is extremely angry and starts yelling at Jabai, especially because he is supposed to be lying down so he can heal properly. But Jabai tells him that he will hold back the enemies so that he can escape. Bisco becomes even more angry, but Jabai requests him to do it because he can't go on the journey with him anymore since his life is about to end, and that he won't be useful to him anymore since has taught him everything that he could teach him. But Bisco isn't willing to accept it, so he starts making excuses like who will make food for him and who will make medicine from the mushrooms that they find. Jabai knew he will say something like this, so he answers that Milo will be there to aid him in his journey, and he is even better of a doctor than he will ever be. Bisco is shocked and can't believe that Milo will go with him, and he refuses to take him with him since the world outside is extremely dangerous and he doesn't want to risk Milo's life without any reason. But Milo is sure that he wants to go ahead with him because he wants to cure his sister. When Milo mentions his sister, Bisco remembers that Pawu is just lying around beside them and immediately urges Milo to inject him with a mushroom injection because her rust must have become active once again after she fought with him that badly some moments ago. Milo also finally realizes that his sister is near him, so he immediately pulls out the mushroom injections and put one in Pawu's neck, which immediately starts slowing down the spread and Pawu's breathing becomes stable once again. Milo says one last goodbye to Pawu and promises her that he will find a cure for her which will allow her to live the rest of her life peacefully without any suffering. Bisco urges to save the rest of his words for later when they meet since the enemies are just around the corner. But since Milo is still a bit too sentimental, he can only grab him as he makes a run towards the exit where Jabai holds back the enemies for them as they run past the initial barrier, but the rest of the enemies are on their shoulders to deal with. But Bisco isn't too worried as a brand new adventure awaits in front of him. After defeating the enemies, they finally escape to the outside of the prefecture and start making their way towards their next destination, which is Akita. At first Milo lets Bisco lead him wherever he wants, but soon he realizes that Bisco might not know where he is going. So he voices out his concerns as timidly as he can, which goes right past Bisco's ears, but he doesn't pay attention. This makes Milo even more worried, so this time he tries acting a bit more bravely, but this only leads to Bisco becoming angry at him as he gives him two choices, either to return back to the city, or just follow him whenever he is going. After asserting his presence as the top Alpha Sigma male, Bisco turns back and starts moving once again. Milo knows that he is a wanted criminal by this point, so he can't go back at any cost. Not to mention that he has to save his sister as well as Jabai, which makes him even more determined in following Bisco. Soon, they both reach a grassy patch of plain where a few remnants of the past civilization can be seen buried beneath the grass and soil. Milo is amazed to see all of this as he has never traveled outside before. This upsets Bisco as he reminds him that they aren't here on a sightseeing trip, so he better not treat this adventure like one. Milo admits his mistake and starts moving once again, but suddenly his head starts to feel light, and soon his eyelids close down as he falls to the ground unconscious. When he wakes up, Milo finds himself in the car beside Bisco, who hands him a lizard and tells him that he gotta eat it if you wanna survive. Milo is extremely disgusted, but since this is the only source of food they have, he can only man up and eat the cooked up lizard in one big gulp just like Bisco taught him. After filling their stomach with lizards, they finally move once again, and soon enough they reach the place where Bisco was leading him to, which is where Akutagawa was supposed to be staying while waiting for him to come back. Milo is shocked to see such a giant crab, and especially a tamed one. Bisco feels proud of Akutagawa and his skills as his partner. Bisco informs Milo that Akutagawa will be their ride to the mines, where they will find rails to travel to Akita. Bisco invites Milo to ride Akutagawa, which makes Milo a bit hesitant as he feels that it might be rude to the crab, but Bisco assures him that it will be fine and Akutagawa is a good boy. But when Milo tries to climb Akutagawa, he throws him far away, which makes Bisco laugh out loud because the timing was too perfect. Milo feels upset that he was kicked away, so he tries again, but this time a bit more patiently, but he suffers from the same fate, making him feel like giving up. But Bisco urges him to try again and promises that this time he will help him in making a bond with Akutagawa. But when Milo tries following his instructions, he feels that Akutagawa feels completely different from when he was doing the same thing with Bisco. Milo gives up and goes to sleep, feeling that Akutagawa might just hate him or something. Bisco can only laugh at his misery, as this is the most he has ever enjoyed something ever since he started following Jabai on his adventures. The following morning, Milo wakes up and immediately gets back to his practice with Akutagawa, and a bit by bit he seems to be improving, but just when he feels this, Akutagawa decides to betray him as it immediately speeds up, making Milo shriek from fear as the speed is too much even for him. If that wasn't frightening enough, while trying to slow down Akutagawa, Milo finds a woman standing in their way, which makes him even more desperate to slow down Akutagawa, and even though he manages to do so, he himself falls over and is reduced to a laughingstock in front of the girl. The girl turns out to be none other than Tyrell, who is on the run after escaping Governor Kirikawa's control. She tries stealing Akutagawa but fails after Bisco discovers her. Fearing that Bisco might unalive her at the spot, she immediately runs away like Team Rocket, promising to return again. In the meantime, Milo gets used to Akutagawa and their bond continues to develop. This surprises Bisco, who has never seen anyone bond this quickly with Akutagawa before. After packing their stuff, they move once again to the mines, but while they are on their way, they make a pit stop at a ruined temple nearby. But when they enter inside to rest, they find there is already someone inside, and that someone is none other than Tyrell, who seems to be struggling with something stuck inside her throat. Milo immediately recognizes the symptoms, so he first lets her empty the medicine that she had in her mouth, and then he moves on to kiss her fiercely on the lips, but this was only to open her lips, so he can grab the thing inside her mouth with his teeth and pull it out in one go. Bisco is freaked out about the creature that Milo just pulled, so he answers that it was a growth worm that was used by slave owners to keep their slaves in control so they won't ever rebel. Tyrell, who was just saved from eventually choking on this worm, finally leaves a sigh of relief as she finally understands why all those special forces soldiers kept on taking the pills no matter what. When she's done ranting, Bisco asks her if she will ever thank Milo who saved her or not, but Tyrell fights back by saying that they must have saved him only because they wanted her body. Just when she is about to become a third-class stripper, Milo stops her and tells her that he didn't save her because he wanted her body, but Bisco doubles down on it and tells her that even if he were to die a virgin, he will never touch a flat girl like her. Tyrell wants to argue, but since she knows that it's the truth, she can only shut up as she decides to pay them in another way. She asks them if they are hungry, and after receiving a yes from them, she pulls out her inventory of various snacks and stuffs and offers them at a far pricier rate than what they sell for at the market in the city. But since they won't be able to get much of them anymore, Milo buys some and eat them with Bisco before going to sleep. Later at night, Bisco wakes up and finds that everything is shaking around. He soon realizes that the temple they were sleeping in was a temple crab, so he immediately goes to its top to see outside and finds that Milo is riding atop on the Akutagawa, trying his best to catch up to the monster and stop it. Bisco suggests Milo to order Akutagawa to use its claws to split the head of the temple monster so he can defeat it with his mushroom arrows. Milo agrees to his suggestion and tries his best to talk to Akutagawa, and fortunately Akutagawa listens to him and follows his orders. With their teamwork, they are able to defeat the temple monster, but before they can celebrate, the monster shots his one last shot, which ends up blowing up the mines, making their plan go in dump. But Bisco doesn't worry that much since he had a plan B if anything goes wrong. So they head back to sleep without any problems, but when they wake up in the morning, they find that Tyrol has run away after taking out all of Milo's money and replacing it with snacks to last them for a week. They aren't too grumpy and moves forward as their journey is extremely long. This journey takes a toll on both of them as they are extremely hungry and exhausted, but all of the stuff around them is in ruins, so they can only walk forward. Finally, Bisco spots something red, which turns out to be red watermelon with red skin, and rushes after it, but before he can reach it, it is stolen by a kid, so Bisco tries to bully the kid into giving it back to him, but the kid has other friends who are even armed to the teeth. The kids threaten Bisco to free their friend or they will riddle him with holes and send his body back to Kurikawa to be made an example of. But instead of getting afraid, Bisco is confused as he don't know who this Kurikawa guy is, so Milo tells him that it's the governor, which makes Bisco finally understand as he tells the kids that he isn't a part of Kurikawa's gang, but instead he himself is a terrorist who is wanted for $800,000 by the government, and if they take him to Kurikawa, they will not only get the money but will also be able to live a good life later on. The kids don't believe him, but when he shows them the bounty poster, they finally believe him, so Bisco and Milo are taken in as hostages and carried to the base of the children, where both of them are placed in different cells, so they won't be able to work together to escape. Milo, being Milo, easily rizzes up the girl, and with this he gets freed and even enjoys a delicious meal. The girl introduces herself to be Plum, an orphan whose parents were eaten by the blowfish that randomly invaded their settlement a few years ago. While talking to Plum, Milo learns a lot of things about the children and even finds that they have been lied to by the government, that they have gotten rust when it's just some basic seashell disease which can easily be cured by a few simple ingredients. Meanwhile, Milo is helping Plum in curing her disease while also getting the support of other children. Bisco, on the other hand, is enjoying a delicious meal after a long time and can't help but ask the children for more, but the children warns him to not become too free, so he can only look around the cell where he finds a fish hook hanging on the wall, so he asks the children whom it belongs to. So one of the children named Nuts answers that it belonged to his father, who was the leader of the resistance, but he got his head blown off by Kurikawa's army. Bisco feels pity for such a beautiful weapon to be laying around like this, so he asks Nuts to give it back to him, but Nuts tells him that he is a prisoner, so he should just act like one. As he leaves, the other kid named Kusuk, who seems to be studying a map of a subway, piques the interest of Bisco, who asks him to give it to him, and for some reason, Kusuk doesn't hesitate and gives it to him. When asked for a reason, he answers that it was because his father was indebted to a mushroom keeper, so he is repaying that favor. While this is all going on, Pau, on the other hand, feels a bit lost after she realizes that not only she lost to Bisco, but also lost her precious brother, whom she can't find anywhere. So she heads out to search for them, but on her way, she stops at a ruined settlement where she saves a couple from a spider monster, and in return they take her back to their house where they offer her some tea and tells her about this settlement which used to thrive before a mushroom keeper destroyed it with his mushroom-filled medicine, which made everyone leave the town, and now only they both live here trying to rebuild the settlement just like it used to be. Pau feels a bit suspicious, so she decides to investigate, so a while later when the couple leaves, she starts looking around when she stumbles into a tunnel which leads into a lab where the couple has been torturing the poor people they lured into their traps by acting kind and then using their bodies to create new carved puppets. She wants to take action, but the couple laughs as they tell her that they poisoned her tea, but Pau laughs at them instead as she pulls out her Uno reverse card as she confesses that she always felt suspicious, so she didn't drink at all. The couple realizes that they can't win against her, so they decide to blow up the cave and be done with it so they won't have to suffer any punishment at anyone else's hands beside their own. Back to Bisco, he frees himself after Kusuk leaves to pee in an emergency. Meanwhile, outside, Milo heals everyone and even gives the medicine's recipe to the kids so they can make some more if they run out of it. Even though the kids should have been celebrating it, they can't since the blowfish randomly attacks their settlement. The kids immediately take their positions trying to fight the blowfish, but they are outnumbered, so they leave their fate to heavens, but fortunately for them, Bisco is there to save the day and rescues all of them from the blowfish in return of getting all the station names because he can't read the kanji written on the map. To thank him for his service, Nuts gives him his father's fish hook as Milo leaves alongside him to their next destination, as Milo promises promises Plum that they will meet later if fate wills, so leaving the rizzed up girl behind with a silent hope in her heart. Their journey towards the subway station is a long one, and the issue they face is a terrible snowstorm which has left everything white as far as their eyes can see. While traversing the long snowy plains, they come across Tyrol once again, who is frozen in a layer of ice, and if they didn't rescue her, she would have died in a couple of hours. But even though they saved her, Tyrol doesn't thank them, which makes Bisco angry at her, but Tyrol doesn't care because she feels that she should have died there since there is no point in living her dull life anymore. Bisco tells her that she's just 22 and not that old, so why would she wanna die, to which Tyrol angrily replies that she has seen things in her life that they could never hope to see in their lives, and that's why she is so fed up and just wants to end everything. Bisco tells her that if she wanna die this badly, then she should at least repay her debt to them before she does so. But Milo uses a soft approach and tells her that there is still good left in living and that she shouldn't give up this easily. His words make her heart feel a bit alive once again, so she agrees to travel with them for a while, so they start moving forward towards the subway station once again. While they are heading towards the subway station, they stumble into merchants who are extremely greedy, but Tyrol comes in with a clutch as she knows their language and helps them negotiate a pretty good deal, which includes some rations and warm clocks to travel in the snow for longer. With their new gear, they finally arrive at the entrance of the subway station, but the ice is blocking it. So Akutagawa shatters all of it with his hand and makes an entrance for them to walk in. But since the system has been closed for so many years, they can only tinker with the backup system to see if they can jumpstart the train once again or not. Fortunately, Tyrol happens to be an ex-technician who worked with some technicians before they all died of rust. While she is fixing stuff, Milo goes through a guide that they received from the merchants, which happens to be a diary of a mushroom keeper, and from it they learn about a giant snake who probably contains clues to the rust-eating mushrooms that they have been searching for. After Tyrol has fixed the stuff, she tells them to board the train as she says her goodbyes to them and is about to leave, but Milo stops her and asks for her name since they never asked her earlier. She requests them to not make fun of her name as she tells them that it's Tyrol, and both of them keep their promise and thank her for her service before promising to meet later if fate has written it in their favor. After the melodramatic goodbye, they both finally relax for a bit as the train will take them to their destination sooner or later. But it was a big mistake as they didn't expect for oily slimes to attack them, which causes both of them to suffer for a bit before they finally manage to kill it by working together as a team. Milo finally lets go of his fear of using a bow and is able to shoot properly as Bisco teaches them by grabbing his hand and encouraging him, which is almost going the BL route, but fortunately, they stop before it gets any more slimy. After getting out of the tunnel, what lies in front of them is a giant rupture in the ground, which is a weeping canyon known to be an extremely beautiful yet extremely lonely place. This is where the mushroom keeper collected the rust-eating mushrooms 15 years ago, and if they want to go any further with their discoveries, they first need to take care of the giant snake that isn't any less intimidating than a fully fledged dragon. Bisco immediately makes his way towards the other end, so they can both shoot him from two different sides, but his plan fails as their arrows are too weak to do anything to the giant snake. And if things weren't already prickly, Pau appears out of nowhere as she rushes towards Bisco as if she cheated on her or something, making Bisco feel even more anguished as he shakes his head. But before she can attack him, he stops her and tells her that her brother is completely fine and that he consented to come with him on this adventure. But Pau doesn't believe him and blames him for gaslighting her innocent brother into believing his own lies. Hearing this, Bisco realizes that he can't stop her if he doesn't get too harsh, so he asks her to make sure if she is definitely his sister or is she his mother, the way she doesn't want to let him grow up on his own. This pisses off Pau as she immediately charges at her, but the giant snake had a different plan as it randomly attacks in their direction, causing Bisco to call out Pau to dodge, but her reaction speed is still a bit slow, and she ends up being grabbed by the snake, who carries her into the air, forcing Bisco into thinking for a way to save her or something. But Milo is one step ahead of him, considering the one in danger is none other than his big sister. He takes help from Akutagawa and climbs on top of the snake and frees Pau by attacking the snake, who drops Pau from its clutches. But this leaves him and Akutagawa without a guard, so the giant snake ends up taking a chunk of Akutagawa's arm, and Milo is almost thrown into its mouth as well. But Bisco comes in with a clutch and saves him by putting some mushrooms into its mouth, which makes the snake suffocate and die since there is no hole left in its body to breathe. The corpse of the giant snake falls onto the ground and the group can finally take a closer look at it, which reveals that the rust-eater mushrooms were indeed growing on its scales. But the problem is that they aren't any different from regular mushrooms, which makes Bisco disappointed. So he is about to leave to search for another giant snake, but Milo stops him and tells him that he will die since he has already lost so much blood in the previous fight. This sparks a debate within them, which causes Milo to clench the mushroom in his hand, which suddenly starts to glow. He immediately stops Bisco to confirm his theory, and after confirming it, he is sure that the mushroom keepers have some special blood in their bodies which turns the rust-eater's mushrooms into real rust-eater mushrooms. Just when they discover this, they hear some noise outside, which turns out to be Kurikawa coming to take the corpse of the snake which he discovered while chasing after Bisco. Bisco tries to stop them, but Kurikawa injures him with a rust bullet and leaves after telling him that he will capture him later on if he ever survives. Unfortunately for Bisco and others, they only have enough rust-eater mushrooms to make 2 medicines, which Milo gives to his sister to deliver one of them to Jabai while he gives the other to sister, so she can finally get rid of her rust. But Pau secretly hands over her own vial of medicine to Bisco since she knows that he needs it more than her since his organs are being rusted by the rust. She also leaves Milo to him and teases him one last time before leaving for good. She is on her way back to the city, but she stops by a base setup Gunma watch, but something feels odd, and she is indeed correct as her soldiers seem to have been corrupted by something, and one even tries to kill her with a submachine gun. Just then, Kurikawa arrives on the scene as well and tells her that the answers to his questions relies on Jabai, whom he has captured previously in the city while he was trying to stall for some time for Bisco and Milo. A few days later, Bisco is still recovering from his injuries when Milo hears the announcement by Kurikawa, which involves the lives of his sister and Jabai. He can't tell Bisco because he will come with him, but since he is injured, he doesn't want to risk his life. But Bisco is far more intelligent and discovers his secret as it's obviously written on his face. This leads to a fight between them as Milo tries to convince Bisco to stay back since he can't afford to lose his only true friend in the world. On the other hand, Bisco can't lie. Pau and Jabai die at the hands of Kurikawa, so they both have to sort it out with their fists, which Milo ends up winning since Bisco is extremely sick to even fight back. After knocking out Bisco, Milo leaves with his bows and arrows to rescue his sister and save Jabai along the way as well. As for what made Milo so mad was how Kurikawa tortured his sister on live television just to have him come out and give him the secret that he wants, which is obviously the secret to activate the rust-eater mushrooms. Milo knows that if he doesn't save her sister in time, Kurikawa might end up killing her the way he is torturing her. So he immediately rushes to the location that he gave him, and after he arrives there, he finds Kurikawa alongside his other goons. Milo threatens Kurikawa to give Pau back to him, but Kurikawa asks him to fulfill his bargain first, which is the secret behind the activation of the rust-eater mushrooms. Milo accepts his bargain and tells him that to activate the rust-eater mushrooms, they need special materials, and while he is demonstrating them, he secretly creates a mushroom with poisonous spores which knocks out everyone in the room except Kurikawa, who reveals the secret that he is also a mushroom keeper. This catches Milo off guard, so he shoots him with a secret arrow which gives Kurikawa the control of anyone that he shoots it with. He controls Milo to place a knife on his throat, so he can get the truth out of him, but just then, Bisco arrives and shoots Kurikawa, destroying his right arm, which was a prosthetic with the arrows installed. But since Kurikawa still has the control of Milo, he uses Milo to shoot Bisco, which leaves Bisco in a paralyzed condition so he can even fight back. Milo begs Kurikawa to spare Milo, and in return he even tells him the secret about rust-eater mushrooms, that he needs the blood of mushroom keepers to activate them. But Kurikawa is black-hearted just like his name, so he tells Milo that he didn't want to spare them even if he told the truth. So he is about to order Milo to finish off Bisco, but just then Jabai appears and rescues them by shooting an arrow at the remote control, thus making Kurikawa unable to do anything. Seeing the shock on both of their faces, he tells them that he escaped from the cell and even rescued Pau, but then he heard some commotion upstairs which he knew was done by none other than both of them. Jabai knows that things aren't finished as there are still a lot of Kurikawa's goons left, so he requests Milo to take Bisco away from this place while he holds them back. But unfortunately he isn't able to hold all of them back as some of them chases after Milo and even fills his back with arrows, but Milo still doesn't give up till he finally reaches Akutagawa, who destroys all of their persuaders. Milo finally lies on the ground as he begs Bisco to not die. While trying his best to hold back his tears, Bisco can only call him an idiot as he tells him to worry about himself first since he is in a much worse condition than him. Later, Milo finds himself in a grassy sunny plain where Bisco and others are cooking food for lunch while he walks towards them, but he is never able to approach them no matter how hard he tries. When Milo finally wakes up from this dream, he realizes that he can't see anything. He rubs his hands on his face and realizes that his eyes are covered by the bandages, which makes him afraid, so he calls out for Bisco, who answers him and tells him that he is here and will always be here for him. Milo begs Bisco to hold his hands as he talks to him about his dream and wonders if it would come true if Bisco starts dating his sister. Bisco is embarrassed to hear this from his best friend, so he immediately turns it down, talking bad about Pau, like how she is like a gorilla and he doesn't want a woman like that. While Milo is busy talking about the qualities of his sister, Bisco gives the final shot that he had to Milo so he can get better and lies to Milo that he is fine and used another shot that he brewed himself for him. The medicine puts Milo to sleep, who till the end keeps on clinging to Bisco's hand and have him promise that they will always be together. After Milo falls asleep, Bisco heads towards Kirikawa's base to settle the things once and for all. Meanwhile, Kirikawa, who has captured Jabai for the second time, takes him to factory where he shows him the rust that he has been melting to create artificial rust storms, since the natural ones aren't enough to create more people with rust disease. As for how it will work, he talks about Tetsujin, the giant thing in the middle of the factory that was found at the core of that disaster all those years ago. He wants this to create a supply and demand chain for the rust-curing medicine, which will earn him a lot of money, making him the richest person in the world. But for that, he needs Jabai's authority to find gullible Mushroom Keeper to sacrifice himself for the blood needed for the activation of Rust Eater mushrooms. But Jabai refuses to do anything like that, so Kirikawa orders his subordinates to beat him a little bit so that the old man will have another chance to think. But what Kirikawa didn't expect was that the subordinate that he just ordered was none other than Bisco in a disguise, who beats up Kirikawa, forcing him to reveal all of his hands. While Jabai escapes outside as Bisco leaves the responsibility of destroying the factory to him, Bisco himself chases after Kirikawa, who is running away like a dog. Kirikawa uses the remaining of his puppets to fight back, which causes Bisco to suffer even more injuries. Bisco is at his final end and is about to shot by Kirikawa's final bullet when suddenly Milo appears and shoots the bullet out of Kirikawa's hand. It would have been extremely easy for Bisco to kill Kirikawa, but the rust starts crumbling his body, which causes Bisco to sacrifice himself to kill Kirikawa as he pushes him down into the rust pot that he built for his grand plan. Kirikawa melts into the part alongside Bisco, who requests Milo to finish him by his own hands since he doesn't want to die to the rust. Milo shoots Bisco in the heart as he tells him for one last time that he will carry on his torch and keep on living the way that he always lived. But what he truly wanted to say was that he always loved and will always continue to love him, but sadly no one is there to listen to his whispers, which fades away into silence. Outside the rust factory, Jabai and Pau works together to destroy all the remaining troops and bring the giant elephant named Gaincha to ruins, which was the power source of the entire factory. With the Gaincha gone, the rust factory also crumbles to dust alongside Bisco, who was melted into the rust, becoming one alongside it. Jabai and Pau asks Milo where Bisco is, to which he replies that he is in his heart and soul, so he will continue to live alongside him till they both eventually meet in afterlife. Just when they thought that everything was over, the remains of the rust factory randomly explodes, as the Tetsujin, which was dormant, wakes up once again and starts creating nuclear-level rust attacks at anything it sees. Milo realizes that somehow Kirikawa has gained the access to the Tetsujin, as it seems to screaming Bisco's name even after death. Milo gets his bow ready as he asks Pau and Jabai to take care of other things, while he chases after the Tetsujin by himself. In the meantime, Tetsujin seems to be heading towards Imahama Prefecture, as its goal is to probably create another Tokyo-level catastrophe once again. But Milo comes to stop it as mushrooms grow where the rust is the strongest. The mushrooms are somehow able to restrict Tetsujin's movements, but despite that it's still too strong. Even when Jabai join hands with him, they still aren't able to do anything as the Tetsujin continues to wreak havoc. While Milo and Jabai are recovering from the battle with Tetsujin, Pau bumps into Tirol, who was also moving towards Imahama Prefecture after learning about the Tetsujin from other soldiers. Milo puts some bandages on Jabai and leaves him under the care of the merchants, while he himself heads after the Tetsujin once again, as he also wants to confirm something else as well. The Tetsujin continues to move and it soon arrives at the children's base, where Nuts and others immediately decides to run away since dying would mean the end of their town once and for all. but they are still too slow compared to the giant Tetsujin who is about to reduce them to rust. But before its beam can reach the kids, Milo arrives and rescues them. While Milo fights the Tetsujin, Pau arrives with Tirol and Jabai, whom they picked from the merchants who were also busy with packing up their stuff and leaving. While they rest and recover while running besides the Tetsujin, the armed forces of the government arrives to combat it before it reaches the densely populated areas. The Tetsujin is also annoyed by them, so it decides to launch its ultimate move, which is the Rust Wind that Kirikawa was talking about. The Rust Wind reduces everything to dust, and not even the fortified tanks and jets are able to remain in one piece after suffering from that Rust Wind. Fortunately, Milo and others are able to survive thanks to Akutagawa, whose species are immune to rust naturally. Milo knows that it's even more dangerous now, so he decides to leave Pau and others behind for one last shot at the Tetsujin before it eventually reaches the public and destroy everything. He puts all of his efforts into getting close to the Tetsujin, even though it causes him to suffer from so many serious injuries. But he finally manages to get on top of its back as he starts digging with his dagger, but the only thing he finds are a pair of goggles that belonged Bisco before losing all whole and giving up himself to the Tetsujin to do whatever it wants. The Tetsujin grabs him and throws him into the city wall, which shatters all of his bones and makes his eyes go bleak as he can see the death right in front of his face. But just then, the Tetsujin stops as a hand makes his way out, and that person is none other than Bisco, who has come straight from hell to save Milo. After coming back to life, Bisco realizes that his body isn't normal anymore, as a touch of his finger causes the rust to turn into rust-eater mushrooms, which makes him wonder if he has become into a living rust-eater mushroom himself. With his newly found power, he is able to cut down the Tetsujin into half, but when it's time to finish it off, everyone stops him because the Tetsujin will blow itself up, otherwise creating a huge disaster just like the one that happened in Tokyo. So the only thing Bisco can do is wait for his team to cook something up, so he can deal the final blow. The only expert in the team is Tirol, who looks through the secret documents and finds that the pilot for the Tetsujin is hidden behind the iron mask, so they got to destroy that first if they want to kill the Tetsujin without it blowing itself up. Since only Pau has the power and precision to destroy it, she takes the mantle and is about to jump in, but since it might be suicide mission, she asks Bisco if he will give her a thanks for going on such a dangerous mission. Bisco tells her that if she comes back alive, he will give her anything she wants, but Pau wants her reward right now, so she leans forward and steals Bisco's first kiss right in front of his lover, who can only look at them. After taking her reward, Pau jumps into the air to strike the iron mask, which is accurately split in half by her pole, revealing the pilot behind it, which is none other than Kirikawa. Bisco charges up his bow to shoot him, but Kirikawa blinds his eye using precise lasers, so Milo has no choice but to guide him just like he guided him at the subway last time. Just like two lover boys, they shoot their final shot together, which leaves behind a beautiful trail of mushrooms as the chapter of Kirikawa finally closes. The aftermath of the battle is Pau gaining the governorship of the Imahama prefecture, while Bisco and Milo are still declared to be terrorists, as the information regarding them is still too sensitive. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. Like and subscribe the channel for more plot-filled recaps.